Hi, this is NextGen Picks. There's a 75-inch TV sitting on a Walmart end cap for $399.9, says 4K HDR Dolby Vision stamped right across the box, same logo as the $1 and $200 set 2 aisles over, same diagonal, same model series, and 9 out of 10 times the buyer walks out of that store thinking they just won the lottery. Month 3 is when the menu starts hitching. Month 6 is when they realize HDR scenes look weirdly grayer than the regular cable broadcast did on the old set. They didn't get scammed, they got binned. And that's only one of 6 cuts hiding in plain sight on every budget TV under $500. The receipts are there if you look. The spec sheet is designed so you can't. If you want unsponsored breakdowns that actually protect your wallet, hit subscribe. NextGen Picks. That's the only thing keeping this channel honest. And drop a like if you've ever brought home a TV deal that felt right in the store and wrong on the couch. So here's what we're doing. I'm walking you through every single one of the 6 cuts, what they are, where they hide on the box, and the one tell that gives away a bin panel before you ever swipe a card. The 75-inch TV everyone is picking up right now has 4K and HDR printed on it, a solid third claim mini LED. From 3FT away, it looks like a category that's basically figured itself out. Like the floor lifted, the gap closed, and budget buyers are finally getting flagship features for half the money. My read is that's the most expensive illusion in consumer electronics right now. Here's what's actually happening. The marketing labels, 4K HDR, Dolby Vision, even mini LED, those describe what the TV accepts as input, not what it actually puts on the panel. A TV with 350 nit peak brightness can technically support Dolby Vision because it accepts the metadata stream. It just can't display it. The image gets tone mapped down to whatever the panel can actually produce, which on most sub-$400 sets is a flatter, dimmer, washed-out version of HDR that looks measurably worse than the SDR version of the same content. To be fair, this isn't fraud. It's spec sheet jujitsu, legal, technical, and devastating to anyone who reads the box and trusts it. $500 used to be the floor where a real TV started. Now it's the ceiling of a genuinely capable budget tier. But that gap on the wall, the visual gap between the 475-incher and the 480-55-incher, that's a chasm. Same shelf, same price tag, completely different products. The 75-incher is a panel and housing in a box. The 55-incher might actually deliver an image you like in 3 years. Most buyers genuinely don't know which one they'll hold. And the brand thing, the assumption that TCL and Hisense are basically Samsung now, that's true at the $700 tier. It is not true here. Long-term owner threads on our 4K TV and AVS forum show a consistent split. That mid-range and above, the Asian challenger brands legitimately compete. At sub-500 QC variants and firmware, abandonment widen back out. Same brand name, different product class. So let's pick the best one in the entire category and pull it apart. Because if even the winner cuts corners, the rest of the wall cuts harder. The TCL QM6K, RTing's top pick under $500 for 2026. Tom's Guide Best Budget. BGR called it, great TVs are getting cheaper. Reviewed put it at the top of the budget list. 5 independent publications, same conclusion. That convergence isn't an accident. It's the only sub-500 set that combines mini LED backlighting with a native 144Hz panel and Google TV running on hardware that doesn't choke. Currently floating between $448 and $499 for the 55-in on Amazon US, depending on which week you check. Here is what you actually get. A panel with somewhere between 200 and 500 local dimming zones, depending on screen size. TCL deliberately doesn't publish the exact number, which is the first tell. Peak HDR brightness, depending on which review pipeline you're reading, lands around 650 to 720 nits in a 10% window. Native 144Hz refresh, 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, full VRR support, Dolby Vision, and a matte anti-glare coating that genuinely helps in a sunlit room. For a $480 TV, this is the part where I get to be impressed for a minute. They built a real mini LED set at this price. 5 years ago, that was a $2,000 TV. the benchmark moved. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Even the best budget TV cuts. The cuts are just smarter, less obvious, and harder to feel until you've lived with it. Cut number 1, and the one nobody talks about, peak brightness in a real room. 700 nits sounds enormous in a dim home theater. It is. In a south-facing living room with the couch facing the window, it isn't. The Samsung QN90F mid-range does about 2300 nits peak. The QM6K does roughly a third of that. That difference is invisible on a spec sheet. It is extremely visible at 3:00 p.m. on a Sunday when you're trying to watch a football game and the highlights look gray. My honest read is that the QM6K's brightness sits right at the threshold of fine in most rooms and below the threshold of great in any room. Cut number 2, dimming zone density. 200 to 500 zones sounds like a lot, and it is, compared to the zero-zone direct-lit cheap TVs around it. But the BGR review specifically called out blooming around bright objects on dark scenes. Watch a sci-fi movie with stars on a black background. The stars get a soft glow around them. That glow is the zone count not being granular enough to isolate one star from its neighbors. On a 1000-zone mini LED at the next price tier, the glow basically disappears. Here, you'll spot it. Once you spot it, you can't unsee it. That's the part that genuinely frustrates me about budget mini LED. The tech is in the name, but rationed in execution. Now, I almost didn't include this, but the speaker situation matters more than people think. The QM6K, like every TV in this tier, runs maybe 20 watts of total amplification through small downward-firing drivers. Tom's Guide put it bluntly in their head-to-head, don't expect wall-thumping sound. Dialogue clarity is okay. Anything cinematic is thin. The math is simple. Bigger sound needs bigger drivers. Bigger drivers need a bigger cabinet. A bigger cabinet costs more materials and shipping. So the speakers shrink every time. I want to say something that probably should have been in every TV review you've ever read. The lab is dark. Your living room isn't. The numbers in our ratings and Tom's Guide come from a calibrated, blacked-out test environment that doesn't exist in any actual house. A TV that earns great HDR in the lab can land at, yeah, it's okay, I guess, at noon in your kitchen. That gap between lab spec and lived spec is what every spec sheet hides. Okay, back to the QM6K. Here's where I'm going to upset half of you. The TCL QM6K is, in my read, a better TV than the Samsung Q7F at the same price. I know Samsung, trusted name, better software. The receipts are there if you look. Samsung at this tier is selling you brand premium, not panel premium. The Q7F skips mini LED entirely. It's a standard QLED with edge-lit zones. The QM6K hits harder on contrast and pulls way ahead on gaming with that 144 Hz native panel. If you've owned both, drop in the comments. I'm genuinely curious which way you'd bet because the brand loyalty comments and the picture quality comments tend to split right down the middle on this one. So drop your room setup in the comments while you're there. Bright living room with windows, dim bedroom, basement with no light at all, because that one detail flips half the analysis we're about to do. A QM6K in a basement is a different TV than a QM6K in a sunroom. Quick Hisense tangent. I keep seeing people in those threads recommend the Hisense U6QF over the QM6K because it's $50 cheaper. That recommendation is... Anyway, we'll get to Hisense in a minute. Back to the cuts. Here's where we are. 2 cuts down. Peak brightness and zone density. Both visible only when you compare directly against something better. Both invisible on the box. Both quietly determined whether your $480 set looks like a real TV or a screensaver running an HDR demo. The next 4 cuts, and this is the part the long-term threads don't let go of, those don't show up on day 1. They show up on month 13, month 22, year 3. They turn a working TV into a TV you stop using, and one of them is the single biggest reason a sub-$500 TV ends up in a closet inside 30 months. To be fair, None of what I'm about to lay out is meant to scare anyone off this category. People buy great budget TVs every day. The TCL QM6K is genuinely a great budget TV. So is the Hisense U6QF in the right room. The point isn't don't buy a budget TV. The point is to know exactly what you're buying, what corner got cut to land at 480, why that specific corner. And whether it's a corner you'll feel every day or one you'll never notice. The buyer this whole video is built for. The person standing in the aisle with $500 and one upgrade decision in their hand, that buyer doesn't get a do-over. Returns are awkward, big TVs are heavy, the box hits the curb in week 1. Once you're 3 weeks past purchase, you're keeping the set. So the homework happens now, before the swipe, not after. The funny part is, the same buyer who agonizes over a $100 mechanical keyboard for 2 weeks will walk into Costco and impulse buy a TV they'll stare at 6 hours a day for half a decade. We pick the wrong things to optimize. One last thing before we move on, the dirty screen effect, that faint cloudy modeling some panels show on uniform mid-gray, like during a hockey game's ice surface or a slow camera pan across a clear sky. That's the panel binning lottery showing up in your living room. 2 QM6K is off the same factory line can show different amounts of it. The clean ones go to one retailer's premium display channel. The lottery grade ones land in the box you carried home. Pattern-based inference, but it's the most consistent observation across long-term owner threads. That's part of why I keep coming back to this one. The same TV isn't always the same TV. Okay, 3 TVs, 4 remaining cuts, 3 different philosophies, 3 things they cut, 3 different ways the same $500 ends up on your wall. Let's get into it. 3 TVs, 4 cuts to compare. Let me lay out who we're working with first. TCL's QM6K we already broke down. Mini LED, 144 Hz native. Google TV, $480 for the 55-in. The Hisense U6QF, formerly U6YQF in some listings. Also Mini LED, also Dolby Vision, but capped at 60 Hz native panel and currently sliding around $450 for the 55-in on Amazon. And then the screen size buy, the 75-in Insignia NS75UQF26 from Amazon's house brand, around $500 when it's in stock. No Mini LED, basic LED backlight, fire. TV running on a society I describe as trying its best. Cut number 3 is native refresh rate and the related HDMI 2.1 question. Here's where the gap between these 3 opens up wide. Refresh rate marketing is one of the most aggressive lies in the entire TV industry. You'll see boxes that say motion rate 240 or true motion 480. Those numbers describe interpolation processing, not the actual panel refresh ceiling. The panel itself, the physical hardware, is locked at 60 Hz on the Hisense U6QF and the Insignia. Run a PS5 at 4K 120 into either of them and the console will negotiate down to 4K 60 because the panel can't accept the higher signal. The QM6K, on the other hand, runs a true 144 Hz native panel with 2 full HDMI 2.1 ports, meaning your PS5 or Xbox Series 10 actually sees its 120 Hz mode honored. For gaming, that's the entire ball game. For anyone watching live sports, fast-cut hockey, soccer, Formula 1, it's also not nothing. Fast motion at 60 Hz on a budget panel shows judder around camera pans. At 120 Hz, it smooths out. I'll give credit to the QM6K here. They didn't have to put HDMI 2.1 in this set at this price. Most competitors didn't. Then there's HDMI bandwidth. HDMI 2.0 caps out at 18 gigabits per second. HDMI 2.1 hits 48 gigabits per second. That's the difference between this works for now and this works for the Xbox you'll buy in 2028. If you're keeping your TV 5 years and your console more than 2, the gap matters. The U6QF and Insignia both ship with HDMI 2.0 only. 5 years from now, that's the connector that ages your TV before the panel does. Fast forward 16 months into any of these 3 TVs, and the picture quality is basically the same as day one. The processor isn't, the Smart OS isn't, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. Cut number 4, the brain. This is the landfill cut, the part nobody talks about, and the single biggest reason a budget TV ends up in a closet inside 30 months. Tom's Guide. reports cheap TVs ship with as little as 2 GB of storage and quad-core ARM processors that get outpaced by app updates within 2 years. Netflix, YouTube TV, and Disney Plus keep adding features. Your TV's RAM does not. The result 16 months in is opening Netflix takes 8 to 14 seconds. The Google TV launcher hitches, and the search box lags behind your typing. The QM6K runs the most modern society of the three. Quad-core MediaTek class, 3 GB of RAM, 16 GB of storage. Bare minimum for Google TV in 2026 to feel snappy past month 18. The U6QF runs older silicon, 2 GB of RAM, 8 GB of storage. By month 18, owner threads are full of anyone else having lag issues, posts. The Insignia Fire TV runs the cheapest society of the bunch and adds Amazon's ad injection on top. Every time you press the home button, you're loading a sponsored row before getting to your apps. Software longevity matters even more than the society speed at day one. TCL commits to roughly 4 years of firmware updates. Hisense varies by region, but tracks closer to 3 to 4. Amazon-branded TVs get whatever Amazon feels like updating, which historically tapers after 18 months. Once the firmware stops, app DRM updates start breaking things. Netflix HD turns into Netflix SD. Disney Plus stops launching. YouTube starts skipping ads, but also starts crashing. The TV still works, it just stops being useful as a smart TV. Most owners plug a Roku or Fire Stick into the back at that point and accept that they bought an expensive, dumb TV. The streaming stick fix works, by the way. It just stinks. You paid $480 for a smart TV and end up taping $35 of plastic to the back to make it actually work. Speakers next. Cut 5. Here's what's actually happening with the audio side. 3 TVs, 3 different ways the same physics get cheap. The QM6K runs a 2.0 channel at 20 watts downward firing. The U6QF runs 2.0 at 18 watts, also downward firing. The Insignia 75-incher runs 2.0 at 14 watts, sealed plastic enclosure. The smaller the wattage and driver, the worse the dialogue clarity scales when you push volume past 40%. All 3 of them distort. The 75-in Insignia distorts the loudest because it's pushing the smallest amplifier through the largest physical resonance volume. Side note, and I'll get sidetracked for a second, the audio engineering math is brutal. Bigger cabinet equals lower distortion at volume every time, no exceptions. There's no software trick that fixes physics. Okay, back to the point. The fix for any of them is the same, a $150 to $250 soundbar, but the framing matters. If you're buying the 75-incher because it's the only way to afford a big screen on a budget, you've also implicitly committed to spending another $250 on a soundbar. That's no longer a $500 purchase, that's a $750 purchase, and at $750 you have other options. And the part that genuinely bothers me about the budget speaker situation, manufacturers know the speakers are bad. They know you'll add a soundbar, so they spec the drivers to the absolute floor, just enough to pass cert, not enough to be enjoyed. They're betting on your soundbar bailing them out. Whole tier of the market priced around an accessory you haven't bought yet. Quick hidden trade-off that matters more than people think, panel chemistry. The TCL Q6M and Hisense U6K use VA-type panels. High native contrast, deep blacks, but viewing angle drops off quickly past 30° off-center. The Insignia 75-incher, some units ship with IPS class panels for the larger sizes. Better viewing angles, but native contrast plummets to maybe 1200.1. That means the larger Insignia is, wait, let me come at this differently. The viewing angle versus contrast trade-off is panel chemistry. And budget TVs don't get to pick the chemistry. Manufacturers buy whatever panel batches are cheapest that month. Which panel you get depends on which week your specific unit was built. Same model number, different unit, different image. That's the bending conversation from earlier coming back around. 9 times out of 10, the unit you bring home is statistically average, but average in this category includes a fairly wide spread. 2 reviewers reviewing the same TV can come away with different impressions because they tested different panels. I know half of you are going to disagree with me on this one, and that's fine. That's the comments. Hisense is the single riskiest budget brand to buy in 2026 right now. Consumer Reports estimates roughly 20% of Hisense TVs develop a problem within 5 years. 20%. That's a 1 in 5 lottery. The $50 savings versus TCL doesn't cover the warranty gap. Tell me I'm wrong below. That's the part that splits this audience the hardest. Half of you reading this are thinking, I've had my Hisense for 3 years, no problems. You're being dramatic. The other half are reading from the comment section of a YouTube repair channel where the same dead power board failure shows up week after week. Both experiences are real. The math just isn't on the same side as the spec sheet. That's the tell. So, where does this leave us? 3 TVs, 4 cuts in detail. Pictures getting sharper. The QM6K is winning more cuts than in losing. The U6QF is winning on price and losing on refresh rate, software longevity, and reliability profile. The 75 in Insignia is winning on screen size and losing on basically everything else. And the spec sheet won't tell you this, but winning on screen size doesn't matter if you're sitting 12 FT away. At 12 FT, your eye stops resolving 4K detail past about a 65 in panel. You bought 10 extra inches, you literally can't see. But there's one more cut, the biggest one. The cut that determines whether the TV you actually unbox survives at all. And it's also where the verdict has to start. Build quality and panel bending, the lottery I keep coming back to, the part nobody can quote you a spec on, the cut that doesn't show up until the box is in your living room. The 6th cut is the one nobody can size up before the box is open. Build quality and panel bending. Manufacturers grade panels off the line. Grade A goes to one retail channel, grade B to another. The marginal ones get routed to whichever big box chain is buying the most volume that month. Same model number on the box, different physical product inside. The QM6K and U6QF both ship with plastic V feet that flex when you touch them, plastic back panels and bezels that creak under pressure. The Insignia 75 in takes it further. Thinner gauge rear panel, wider stand spread, the whole assembly sits at the upper edge of what its frame can support. None of this destroys the TV in week 1. All of it shows up in year 3. Long-term owner threads consistently report the same 2 failure modes, power supply boards going around month 26, and HDMI ports loosening from repeated cable swaps. Both are repairable in theory. Both cost more than the TV's value by year 3, so you replace the whole set. So, who buys what? 5 buyer types? 5 different right answers. The console gamer, TCL QM6K full stop, 144 Hz native, and HDMI 2.1 aren't optional if you're feeding a PS5 or Series 10. You'll feel the downgrade in week 1 of Forza or Spider-Man. The bright living room buyer. Honestly, the answer flips here. If your room has more than one window facing south or west, do not buy under 500. The QM6K's 700 Nite ceiling will struggle. Stretch to the QM7K or Hisense U6QF at $650 to $900. The TCO over 5 years is closer than the price tag suggests. The bedroom secondary buyer. Hisense U6QF or Amazon Fire 4 series. 3 hours a day, dim room, the cuts don't bite as hard. Save the money. The big screen or bust buyer. The 75 in Insignia, eyes open, sound bar mandatory, expectations calibrated. You're buying real estate, not picture quality. Just know that going in. The darkroom movie watcher. Wait 6 months and buy a refurbished LG B5 OLED. Sub 500 LCD will never give you what you actually want, and stretching the timeline beats stretching the budget. Best overall and best value are the same TV in this category, the TCL QM6K. There's no second place close enough to argue. The Hisense U6QF is the runner-up on price, but the reliability profile and software longevity push me back to TCL. That's the verdict. Here's what's actually happening with the QM6K. It's the only sub $500 TV in 2026 that doesn't ask you to choose between picture quality, gaming, and software longevity at the same time. Every other set in this tier makes you give up 2 of those 3. The QM6K asks you to give up part of 1, peak brightness in genuinely sunny rooms, And that's it. 5 publications, same conclusion, no marketing influence in sight. But here's the part I've been holding for the end. The reason any of this matters. The TV you pick is the screen you'll look at 6 hours a day for 5 years. 21,000 some hours, more time than you'll spend with most people in your life. The 480 decision you're making this week shapes that entire span. Cheap out by $100, and the wrong cut catches up to you in month 16. Stretch by 200, and the cuts become invisible. The math everyone runs is purchase price. The math that actually matters is 21,000 hours of looking at a screen that either treats your eyes well or doesn't. 6 hours a day isn't heavy use. That's average. The buyer this whole video is built for, the one with $500 in one shot, is making a decision about 21,000 hours of their attention. Frame it that way, and the price gap between 480 and 780 looks different. It looks small. It looks like the stretch was the right move. And here's the part I think splits this comment section right down the middle. 9 out of 10 times the buyer who stretches to $700 doesn't regret it. 9 out of 10 times the buyer who saved $50 at 430 does. Most people in 2026 should probably not be shopping under $500 for their primary TV. The mid-range jumped enough that the value math at $700 to $900 has flipped. Same 5-year cost, dramatically different daily experience. Drop a comment. Under $500 forever or stretch to mid-range. Vote it. Genuinely curious where this audience lands. The vetted listings for the QM6K, the U6QF Air, and the QM7K stretch option are in the description. The safe versions that avoid the panel revisions and the counterfeit third-party Amazon listings that have started to show up. No affiliate bait, no bounce pricing tricks, just the configurations that pass the warranty and QC checks laid out across this whole video. If you've owned any of these 3 TVs for more than a year, drop your honest experience below. You're going to read those comments. Half will say, I bought a $300 TV in 2018 and it still works. That's survivorship bias talking. The ones that didn't survive don't post. The long-term data is what shapes the next video. And if cut number 4, the brain dying at month 16, matched what you actually lived through, tell me. That's the data that manufacturers don't publish. That's the script. 6 cuts, 1 verdict, 1 TV worth your money under $500. Drop a comment, hit subscribe. NextGen Picks if this saved you from a bad buy. Talk soon.